Good afternoon. Welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Sorry, this is a day late. I was at an event yesterday afternoon, so couldn't do me Eddie Howe press conference review. But I thought, seeing as though we're doing a match day live today, that I would do it this afternoon so you can have a little recap, although most of the stuff will be out there already. First up in the press conference was Razor from BBC Radio Newcastle, and he just wanted to concentrate on Chris Wood. Eddie Howe obviously spoke very highly of him, said he was a huge player for us and had been outstanding at times, both on and off the pitch, and that it was a difficult decision to let the big centre forward go. Asked about a replacement by Razor, he said, "Look, we're hopeful. We're planning to replace him, but there are no guarantees in this window or any other windows." Razor then moved on to Bruno's injury. Basically admitted that Bruno had come back with positive news from his scan, and that should be okay for resuming his Newcastle career sooner rather than later. One would imagine, having seen him get on the team bus, that he'll be involved today, in some way, shape or form. Also talked about Longstaff and how well he has played in recent weeks. And Eddie said, look, he's been excellent. He does a lot of tireless work for the team. He's played a fantastic role on the right side of the formation, plays with a lot of intelligence. And he also emphasised that he thinks there's goals in him. So, it's probably the one criticism levelled at him by, supporters on social media a lot, that he doesn't score many goals. Also said that, he's responded to coaching. Razor given Eddie Howe a bit of praise, and he said, look, from a coaching point of view, he came in and, he seemed to have a bit of an uncertain future. Obviously the contract has certainly helped his confidence. He's Newcastle through and through. But he also said, look, his attitude's never changed from the moment I've come in. He's been one of the regular performers, wants to play for the club, wants to play well for the club. And he pointed to the fact that he's a Geordie and that he's a Newcastle fan has probably helped him as well. Razor finished off his questions just about Crystal Palace. He said, look, they're a very good team. He says we've had 2 tight games against them. He felt that we've had the better chances in the league game, but in the cup game it was a bit closer. And like he says, with all opposition, we cannot underestimate them. On to Keith Downey from Sky, who asked how difficult will it be to replace Chris Wood. He said, look, we're not going to necessarily replace him with another Chris Wood type of player. But again, re-emphasised that it's a difficult window, and when they do go for a replacement, they will be looking for the right person, who can perform on the pitch, of course, but also the right character in the dressing room. Also said that we've got to be ready to bring in a player that becomes available. He said we've got various targets that we're going to look at. They've not just got one player that they're going to focus on. They've got lots of players, pool of players that they want to look at, who they think would be the right fit and who would fit into this team. So giving very little away as usual. Keith moved on to Isak. Obviously saying that he played well last week, got the winning goal, of course. Eddie Howe said, look, Isak's a great player. That's why we signed him. He can play in a number of positions. He can play wide right. He can play wide left, but that's not necessarily his preferred position. Just re-emphasised Eddie then that he came on, he scored the goal last week, the winning goal, he energised the team, and that he trained well this week, and just said that it's been great to have him on the training pitch because of the break in the season and because of the injury that he sustained. Isak hasn't been able to train with the squad as much as Eddie would have liked, but now that they've had a full week's training there this week, it's been massively beneficial to everybody, but to Isak in particular. Downey also mentioned Chris Wood. Look, he just said he helped the club and we helped him during his time at Newcastle. And we've done the same with the departure. It's a pity that he's had to go, but he gets the security of an extra year in Newcastle United. Get a decent financial deal, of course, a £5 million loan fee, and an option to buy of 15 million could see Newcastle clawing 20 million pound from a 25 million outlay. Great business, really, for a 31-year-old player. Andy Sixsmith was next up. He mentioned a few things that he'd seen in the Fulham game. He said he'd rewatched the Fulham game, and he said, Newcastle's team's quite streetwise now. He says, I noticed Joe Linton listening to Fulham's tactics. He says, I saw Burn thrown on 2 balls. He said, does it please you that the team is savvy now? He's not going to drop himself in it, is he, Eddie Howe? He just said, I don't really notice those things. But he did say, look, game management is important. He says, we are always desperate to win games, but in a good way and within laws of the game. Also, Andy asked him about the Man City Spurs game, which, of course, saw Man City, losing 2-0, but then coming back and winning 4-2. He said, do you watch those kind of games with a different mindset now because we're at the top of the table? He says, fans are having to get used to that. And he went, no, he says, look, I watch the games, and look at them in a tactical way about how we're going to tackle these teams when we play them, what their strengths and weaknesses are, etc. He said, look, I don't sit and pray for goals. So yeah, Eddie Howe watches those kind of games in a different way to fans, of course. He then asked, would he prefer a trophy this season or top 4? Because it's the question a lot of fans are asking. We've asked it on this show, of course. And he just said, look, winning the next game for me is our focus. He said, I'm going to give you a very boring answer. And he did. Also asked about injuries in the squad from last week's game. He said, obviously, with the exception of Bruno, there was a few knocks. His was the worst. Everything else is all okay, though. So clean bill of health for Newcastle, with the exception, of course, of John Joe and Target, who are still, maybe he's about 3 weeks away from recovery. He was asked about communication, had he spoken to the owners about potential transfers? And he just said, look, we're always speaking to the owners. Communication is key, especially during this part of the season when the window's open. Also asked about the improvement of the squad and the team in the last 12 months. And he just said, look, we have improved. We have got a better team, and things will continue to improve. That's the aim over the course of the next few transfer windows. Mark Tulip was up next. No Nisha from the BBC this week. So Mark Tulip was asking the questions. Again, just pointing towards the fact that Wood's left. Will there be anybody coming in? And he just, will it leave him short up front? And he just said, look, we're trying to make sure that all bases are covered. And he clearly knows that, losing Wood is a blow. He's used Wood a lot in games, and he clearly has a vision of what he would like to replace him. Mark pushed him a bit more on it, was saying, Callum Wilson's had injury troubles, and is this going to push you to maybe change the position that you're looking at? Because there's been a lot of rumours that Newcastle were looking for a midfielder in this window. Now we're short in the forward department. Is that going to be pushed on because of Callum's injury troubles? And he just said, look, we don't want to be short in any area, including up front. Again, Mark then pushed on about the business end of the season. He says, like, the business end of the season, is come early for Newcastle because obviously they're in the the Carabao Cup semis, and still in the top 4 as we speak. And he also asked him, as a double barrel question, is the pressure the same at the top of the table as it is when you're in the relegation spot? And he went, look, it's very, very similar. He says, because, you get the same kind of level of excitement when you win a game. If, Newcastle go in and play a team in and around them and they come out on top, it's just as exciting as if you're in the bottom 3 and you get a win against one of your rivals. So he just said it's an amazing feeling winning those type of games. And, it is very, very similar. But yeah, again, just said, yeah, look, the business end, as he calls it, potentially is here a little bit earlier with the cup semi-final. He did agree with that. Also asked about Man City by Mark Tulip, just saying, did you watch that game? And he enthused about Man City. He enthused about Pep Guardiola, praised the team for their spirit and their comeback against Spurs, and obviously heaped praise on Pep Guardiola. I mean, the guy's a world-class manager, and anyhow, does certainly have a lot of respect for him. Lee Ryder was up next from the Evening Chronicle. Again, just asking if the Chris Wood transfer was a shock, and he went, well, look, 3 or 4 days ago, it wasn't even on the horizon. And he says, and I did say to you in previous press conferences, you've got to understand that January is unpredictable, and sometimes something happens from left field and somebody leaves. So, yeah, the picture was very clear when he answered that question, that this wasn't something that Eddie Howe foreseen. Lee pushed a little bit further on what kind of forward we might see come in. Would it be a similar player to Chris Wood, or would it be a player with a different dimension, a player to excite the fans? And he went, look, of course, would love to see a player come in that can excite, because that's what forward players should do, and of course score goals. So maybe a little hint there, which I noticed the papers picked up on, that we could be going for like a bit more of an out-and-out goal scorer to replace Chris Wood. Lee then asked him if there'd be any others going out in this transfer window. In a very short answer, he more or less said, just wait and see. Again, Lee asking, had he had high-level talks? Eddie Howe was, quick to reply, in what way do you mean high level? And he said, well, have you spoken to the people from Saudi or whatever? And he just goes, look, my daily contact is with Dan Ashworth. And of course, I speak to other people at the club. And he said, I have, on occasions as well, spoken to PIF. So, yeah, Dan Ashworth is clearly, the person he speaks to. Miles was next up from the Shields Gazette, asked him about Karius. And just said, what's the situation with the goalkeepers? With Karius now signing a contract till the end of the season, could there be ins and outs there? A lot of questions have been asked about that this week on social media, and he just said, look, Karius has been excellent with us. He says, but you've got to bear in mind that with the goalkeepers at the moment, we've got a unique situation because we're still in the Carabao Cup. He says Dubravka is cup tied. But he says, obviously, we have, a lot of keepers, and, there may be late movement there, is what he said. Miles asked him if Trippier was okay. Obviously, there was a slight injury to Trippier in the game against Fulham, and he said he's okay. He asked him if he'd be involved today, and he went fingers crossed. Chris, I think it was up next. Again, just saying, would he be looking to bring in a target man to replace Chris Wood? And he just said, look, target men are attractive to me in the formations that I can play. He says, but the guys we've got playing aren't small guys. He says Isaac is 6'3", Callum Wilson's 6'1". We're not necessarily looking to bring in a big target man. So more emphasis really, I think, on a guy who's going to come in, who's going to be able to be, scoring goals and going to be quick. It's lots of stuff suggested, lots of stuff asked, but we'll wait and see, I guess, what will happen in the final 10, 11 days of the transfer window. Also asked about free kicks, about free kicks we take and free kicks that we defend, and and is this something that he focuses on in training? And he just said, yeah, look, 100%. We like to pick up good defensive habits for taking free kicks, and obviously we work on set plays as well in training, like all teams do. Jordan Cronin was up next. Asked how Chris Wood had reacted to the transfer, and he just said, look, he's been excellent about it, and it's something that he's happy with. We've taken the players' consideration, the players' views into consideration, and from our perspective, he's got an extra year now, so he's happy. And the club are happy because of the money that they've got in. Again, Jordan pushed him about, would you have sanctioned this if with the Chris Wood deal? Is it something you would have sanctioned it yourself? Something you would have done anyway? And he just goes, look, it's a difficult position. The player did want to go when he knew what the offer was, and obviously the club saw the financial deal and said, look, it's a no-brainer. So Eddie Howe's been involved. There's no doubt about it in the discussions. But like you said earlier on to the answer, it's been 3 or 4 days ago. This wasn't even on the table, so things can move quite quickly. He asked about, again, Jordan asked about Crystal Palace game today and just said, look, we want to win the game. It's as simple as that. And we want to win every game we play. But we've got respect for the opposition. Ian Murtagh from the Daily Star asked about Isaac, just saying that he's got a great goal ratio. Would you love to see him continue? He said, of course. He says, he has got a good goal ratio at the moment. He said he's a goal scorer, he's a goal creator, and again re-emphasised the fact that he changed the dynamic against Fulham. And he just said, again, Ian Murtagh said it was good to see the strikers combine. For the winning goal, and Eddie Howe just agreed. He then pushed him and said, 4-4-2, is that something you would consider? And he said, look, I'm a manager who's played 4-4-2 quite a lot. He said, but you know, we're winning games, and you've got to be careful not to destroy the balance. And he said, it's not impossible that I could do that. He says, but you know, it's an option that I could do it. He then asked him, would he be doing it against Crystal Palace on Saturday, and he went, never say never. Craig Hope was next up from the Daily Mail. Just saying, did financial fair play a part in the sale of Chris Wood? Because you've mentioned it a few times in press conferences. And he just said, look, I sit here with a football head on. I don't sit here with a financial head on. And he said the transfer of Chris Wood, you know, it's never going to be down to one person. You know, we collectively make decisions. The player makes a decision. Dan Ashworth makes a decision. I make a decision, and the owners make a decision. It's as simple as that. So, you know, we have to make a decision based on the rules that are laid out. Simple answer to a simple question. Also said, you know, with players going out, could this accelerate some of the business, you know, that you might have done in the summer? And he again, he didn't swerve the question. He just said, look, you know, things change. And he said, signing a player now, we would probably sign a player for the long term, not for short term. It doesn't make sense to sign a player for short term. So, you know, we look ahead to each transfer window, and we look ahead with ideas, and again push the fact that he's got pools of players that he looks at, the club look at, the scouts look at, Dan Ashwood looks at, he looks at, you know, and everything is, you know, looked over, scrutinized, and ultimately, you know, it's just a good team effort. It's you know, but yeah, certainly the you know, with Chris Wood going, you know, rumours potentially of other players going as well. We might lose a goalkeeper. We may well, you know, and I've seen there's a lot of rumours going around about potentially Shelby going to Besiktas. Then, you know, that, again, it clears up wages, and financial fair play does play its part as well. He also was asked the question by Craig, you know, if you can't get a forward in, would you consider putting Joe Linton back up top? And he just said, yeah, look, you know, it's not ideal, taking players out of positions that I think they play better in. He says, but you know, we have got options if we didn't sign a forward. Joe Linton could go up top, St. Maximum could go up top, you know. So he clearly doesn't sound alarmed with the possibility of having to do that, but at the same time, there was enough in yesterday's press conference for me to suggest that there is a player imminent, and you know, they wouldn't have let Wood go had there not been a replacement on the cards. But they won't let the guard down. They won't tell you who it is. Next guy up was Chris. Was just asking about the prognosis for Target and John Joe. He said, well, look, the original prognosis was 6 weeks. He got a bit clouded. He says, I think I'm losing track of weeks, you know, and not something he clearly looked at, but he says, I believe they've both got about 3 weeks to go. He said, would transfer plans alter? You know, if you know, say one of those players left, or one of those players, you know, was fit again and could come back in, and he went, well, of course, yeah, if somebody comes back in, they're fit and raring to go, you know, then maybe we wouldn't look at strengthening those positions in this particular window. So again, that points to the midfield. If John Joe comes back, we know that he's got 2 games that he has to play, and then an automatic transfer, an automatic contract renewal would be triggered. I would be very surprised if we don't let John Joe go in this window, because Newcastle won't want to give him a new contract. I can't see the point in giving him a new contract. I think Newcastle would look to better themselves. And I mean, John Joe, you know, rumored to be on something like 70 grand a week, wasn't he? I don't know whether that's accurate or not, but you would imagine they'd want to get him off the wage bill as well and bring in a younger model, if you like. And again, Chris was pushing him about availability of players, and you know, he said, look, we're looking, we're active, but you know, we might not get the players we want, we might not do any business. Kieran was next up. It pushed him on, you know, centre forward and bringing somebody in. It was a lot of the same question in just asked in different ways by the journalists, and they weren't getting the answer they wanted. And Kieran got another little bit out of Eddie Howe, just in the respect of saying that, look, ideally we want a player who can come in, that can play straight away and is ready to play, you know, in the first team now. So not going for a younger player on that particular position. And you know, basically as well, just, you know, saying that he wanted a player that could make the squad stronger. Last up was Chris, and just saying, you know, are you still hoping to be a seller and buyer in this window? And he just said, look, you know, if the deal's right to sell, then we'll sell, and if the deal's right to bring in, we'll bring in. Again, it's just very little given away, and it's the best way, because you're not giving anybody you're not showing anybody your cards, are you? And Chris, again, last question was, do you think the Newcastle tax still exists? And he couldn't answer the question. He just said, look, it's difficult for me to talk about that. I'm not going to comment either way. So another wonderful press conference by Eddie, and from our perspective, gave us the right answers. I'll just dive into the chat. I don't often do this. Don't forget, we are doing a match day live, so get yourself back on 5:15. I think me and a few people, George Mitchell, I think Kevin, who does Monday nights, is going to pop on as well. And we're going to do a match day live, sit and watch the match with you. And we're going to all have a chat about what we think went right and what went wrong. Corrado, afternoon. Les, hope you're well. Kevin, I feel the owners and Eddie have a few signings lined up. I expect 2 to 3 more departures. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, Kevin. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn, by the way. Hit the likes on the way in. Thank you, Corrado. The window is not difficult, really. That's his political comment to set expect. Just look at Chelsea, Arsenal, transfer incoming players and suggest players are out there to be bought. Yeah, I tell you what I found interesting as well. Like we've been linked with Trossard. It's a player who we probably would have all liked, Kevin. But the fact that he in the papers for weeks, it's been 12 million, 12 million, 12 million. And bear in mind, his contract's coming to an end. And Arsenal now, or Liverpool, I think it was Liverpool yesterday, because I see I had a day off yesterday. Liverpool's at £27 million. I mean, that's ridiculous. Great to see Newcastle not getting sucked into stupid business. There's far better players out there than Trossard. 12 million would have taken him. 27 million, no thanks. Bruno come on with a squad when injured, just like Trippier when he was injured. Great team spirit. David, I think he's going to play today, mate. I think it'll be an unchanged team. Afternoon, all. Hi, Dave. And OG, good to see you, mate. Andrew, Alreet, I hope you're well, son. And anybody else in the chat before I go? But don't forget, 5:15, we are back. Massive respect to all the good ones in the chat. Big Billy, I hope you're well, son. And looking forward to watching the watch along. Well, Les, I wasn't going to do one. And then you mentioned it. And I thought, you know what? Let's do it. I've got a bit of time tonight. And it would be good for George Mitchell as well. So look forward to seeing you all then. So I'm back 5:15. Thanks for joining us. Take care. Speak to you soon. A big thank you to all our sponsors, as always. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, and our website skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensaries, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thegohd.com. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria, and you can find them at mrvickys.co.uk. If you want to make an order, give them a call on 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickys.co.uk. Thanks to Blowhole Breweries, you can get a selection of beers, and the cans are in the design of the old Newcastle United entertainers strips. Blowholebrewery.co.uk. Thanks to Melly's Carpets and Beds, laying our reputation one recommendation at a time. The best quality around at the cheapest prices. Melly's Beds and Carpets.co.uk. Email sales@mellysbedsandcarpets.co.uk or give Melly a call on 01670 632 216. And thanks to United Group Travel Limited, UK Coach Holidays in Morpeth, 01670 362 460 or mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls and looking after you on your tour. Some great deals coming up there. Get yourself onto the website to check them out. Thanks also to Media Arts, who do all of our videos and help us with the technological side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the channel, then hit the subscribe button below. Hit the thumb up, which is the like button, which does us a big favour with the algorithm. And click share. Share it to Newcastle United, Facebook groups or Twitter accounts or your own social media to help our community grow. And if you want to join the channel, hit the join button. And for as little as $1.99 a month, you can get some members-only videos and chances to win some fantastic prizes. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. Don't forget as well that we do events through NUFC Matters. And this one is the next event coming up, Friday the 24th of February, an evening with Newcastle United legend Steve Howe. Friday the 24th of February, Tyneside Irish Centre, and tickets are available at £50 from newcastlelegends.com. If you also go onto Voucher and search for the event, you can pick up a bargain on there. Don't forget, we also support the food bank on this channel. www.nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk is where you can find the Matchday Bucket. You can make a virtual donation to the Matchday Bucket 365 days of the year to keep helping the food bank in Newcastle.